Most night security jobs are boring, like painfully boring. But sometimes, the quiet isn't actually quiet. Sometimes, it means someone is watching you. And by the time you realize that, it's already too late. These are 3 night shift security stories that honestly sound fake, but they really happened. When I was 22, I worked night security at a shopping mall in Ohio. It wasn't glamorous. My entire job was basically to walk around the empty mall after closing, make sure no doors were forced open, and check that nothing weird was happening. And usually, nothing ever did. The mall closed at 9. By 9:30 it was completely empty. No music, no people. Just those dim yellow hallway lights and the sound of my own footsteps echoing across the tile floors. At first, it was actually kind of relaxing. I'd just put in my headphones and walk my rounds. But there was one rule my boss always repeated to me. Never assume the building is empty, because sometimes people hide before closing. Usually teenagers trying to sneak into stores or homeless people looking for a place to sleep. So every shift I had to check bathrooms, storage hallways, and the movie theater exits. One night, around 1:15 a.m., I was doing my usual round past the food court. That's when I noticed something strange. One of the escalators was moving. Now, that shouldn't happen. The escalators automatically shut off when the mall closes. I stood there for a second, just watching it slowly roll downward. Completely silent. No one on it. At least, that's what I thought. Then I heard something. Footsteps. But they weren't near me. They were upstairs, directly above the food court. I looked up. Nothing. Just dark storefronts and those security lights glowing faintly. I told myself it was probably a mechanical noise. But then the footsteps happened again. Slow. Heavy. Walking across the upper floor. I grabbed my flashlight and started heading up the escalator. And the weirdest part? The escalator stopped the second I stepped on it. Like someone had turned it off. When I reached the top floor, everything was quiet again. I walked the hallway slowly, checking each storefront. Clothing stores, electronics stores, a closed jewelry shop. Nothing. Until I passed the old toy store. Its metal gate was half open, and that immediately set off alarms in my head. I was positive I locked it earlier. I pulled the gate up the rest of the way and stepped inside. My flashlight beam swept across empty shelves and dusty displays. That's when I noticed the back door. It was open. Not wide open, just enough to show darkness behind it. And I could hear breathing. Someone was inside. I froze. Then a man's voice whispered from the darkness. "Hey, security guard." My heart basically stopped.
Dispatch, this is
I backed
security.
away
I have a
slowly
possible
and called the
intruder in toy
police
store.
immediately.
I need backup now.
When officers arrived and searched the back hallway, they found a man hiding in a storage room.
Check it
He
out.
had been inside the mall for 2 days. Turns out he had been sleeping in different stores at night and stealing things slowly so nobody would notice. But the creepiest part? The officer told me something after they arrested him. Apparently, he admitted he'd been watching me do my patrols for hours, waiting to see if I'd notice him. A few years later, I took another security job. This one was way more isolated. It was a massive construction site for a future apartment complex outside Phoenix. There were no buildings yet, just cranes, half-built structures, and piles of materials everywhere. My job was simple. Sit in a small security trailer overnight and watch the surveillance cameras. If someone tried stealing equipment, I'd call it in. Most nights were incredibly boring. Just empty dirt roads and construction equipment sitting in the dark. But one night, around 3:40 a.m., something strange appeared on camera 7. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but then it moved. There was someone walking through the site. That wasn't normal. No workers were scheduled until 6 a.m. I zoomed in. It looked like a man wearing a hoodie. He wasn't stealing anything. He was just walking, slowly, like he was looking for something. I grabbed my radio and stepped outside the trailer. The site was huge, so I couldn't see him from where I stood. But according to the camera, he was about 100 feet away, near one of the unfinished buildings. So I walked toward it, gravel crunching under my boots, the wind blowing through the metal scaffolding. When I reached the building, I didn't see anyone. But camera 7 clearly showed someone standing right there moments ago. I went back to the trailer to check the cameras again. And that's when things got really weird. The man was now on camera 3, which was on the opposite side of the construction site. There was no way he could have walked there that fast. Then I realized something that made my stomach drop. Camera 3 pointed directly at the security trailer, meaning the man was now walking toward me. I stared at the monitor as he got closer, 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 until he was about 20 feet from the trailer door. And then he stopped. He just stood there, looking directly at the camera, not moving, for almost a full minute. Then he slowly turned around and walked into the darkness. Police searched the area later that morning, but never found him. But the scariest part came when my supervisor reviewed the footage.
Just there.
The man never
He
entered
wasn't
the
on
construction
any of the perimeter
site.
cameras.
He had already been inside the fenced perimeter for hours before I noticed him. Meaning while I sat in that trailer, he had been wandering around the site, completely unseen. The last story happened to a guy I used to work with named Daniel. He was the overnight guard for a large storage facility. You know those places with rows and rows of metal storage units? His job was basically to sit in the office and occasionally drive around the property. One night around 2 a.m., he heard a loud metallic bang outside, like one of the storage doors slamming shut. He checked the cameras. Nothing unusual. But then he noticed something odd. Unit B17 was slightly open. And that was strange, because storage units are always locked. So he grabbed a flashlight and drove his cart over there. The entire facility was silent. Just rows of metal doors stretching into the darkness. When he reached B17, the door was cracked open, making noise. He knocked on the metal door. No response. So he slowly lifted it. Inside were just boxes and furniture. Nothing unusual. He lowered the door and started walking back to the cart. Then he heard movement. Behind him. Inside the unit. He turned around quickly and pulled the door open again. The boxes had moved. Just slightly. Like someone had shifted their weight. That's when he realized something terrifying. Someone was hiding inside the storage unit. Before he could react, a man suddenly crawled out from behind the boxes. Daniel jumped back. The guy looked exhausted and dirty, like he'd been living there. But he didn't attack. He just stared at Daniel and said something really strange.
You weren't supposed to see me.
He said,
You weren't supposed to find this one.
Daniel asked what he meant. The guy pointed deeper into the unit. And that's when Daniel noticed something he missed before. Behind the boxes, there was a hole in the wall. A tunnel. It connected to the storage unit next door. Police eventually investigated and found that several storage units had been secretly connected together with holes in the walls. Someone had been living inside multiple units for weeks, moving between them at night. The man they found had been using them like rooms in a house. Bedroom, kitchen area, even a makeshift bathroom. And no one noticed. Because from the outside, every door was always locked. Most people think night security jobs are boring, and honestly, most of the time they are. But sometimes the quiet places, the empty buildings, the dark parking lots, they aren't actually empty. Sometimes there's someone there, watching, waiting, or hiding somewhere you'd never think to look. So if you ever find yourself alone in a place that's supposed to be empty, just remember something. You might not actually be alone. And if you want to hear more real stories like these, make sure you subscribe. Because trust me, these kinds of stories happen way more often than people think. And some of them are even worse than this.